I can still remember the exact moment it happened, down to the smell of burnt coffee lingering in the break room. It was a Wednesday morning. I had just finished preparing the quarterly reports when I noticed unfamiliar footsteps echoing through the hallway. Sharper, louder, confident but not the good kind. I glanced up from my desk. And there he was, Zach, the founder's son. He was barely 30, dressed in an overpriced designer suit that looked like it was trying too hard to convince everyone he was ready for this role. Spoiler, he wasn't. The ink on his MBA was probably still drying. His father, Mr. Carter, had built this company from the ground up over 4 decades. Sweat, sacrifice, late nights, all of it. And I'd been here nearly 25 years, longer than Zach had even been alive. Zach sauntered toward me, not with a smile, not with a greeting, just that smug half-grin you'd expect from someone who mistakes arrogance for competence. "Ellen," he said, folding his arms like some corporate superhero. "Come to my office, now." Not please, not even can you, just now. A strange chill crept down my spine. Something was off. I followed, clutching my notebook, trying to convince myself this was just a misunderstanding. Maybe he wanted an update on the financial forecasts. Maybe. But deep down, something told me. I knew. The moment I stepped inside, he didn't even offer me a chair. He turned, leaned against his father's old oak desk, the same desk I'd seen Mr. Carter sit behind hundreds of times with humility and grace, and said, like he was commenting on the weather, "This isn't going to take long." Then came the words, "You're irrelevant." I blinked. "Excuse me?" A slow chuckle escaped his lips, the kind that crawls under your skin. "Look, no hard feelings, but you're from a different era. We're moving in a new direction, faster, smarter, leaner. You've been here too long. You're comfortable. That's not what this company needs anymore." I stood frozen. For a second, I thought maybe I'd misheard him. Maybe this was a joke, a bad one. But the dead look in his eyes told me otherwise. "You're firing me?" He smirked wider. "Exactly. Pack your things. Security will escort you out within the hour." My fingers tightened around the notebook in my hands. I could feel the blood draining from my face. I wasn't just a random employee. I was the senior contracts manager. I had written most of the operational contracts this company still depended on. I had been the one who navigated us through the 2008 financial crash, the one who secured the 3 biggest clients still paying our salaries. And yet, here he was, this child in a suit, throwing me out like I was a broken stapler. I swallowed the lump forming in my throat. "On what grounds?" I managed to ask, keeping my voice steady. His answer? A lazy shrug. "It's called restructuring. Look it up." I stood there, chest pounding. My mind raced through every emotion. Anger, disbelief, humiliation. A million things I wanted to say, to shout even. But I didn't. Instead, I smiled. Not because I wasn't shattered, but because I suddenly realized something. He didn't know. He had no idea. Without another word, I turned, walked out of his office, and straight past the gawking stares of my coworkers. Some whispered. Some didn't dare look at me. But none of them stepped forward. I didn't blame them. In corporate life, self-preservation is currency. Back at my desk, I packed slowly. Mechanical, phone charger, family photo. That little ceramic mug from the company's 15th anniversary party. Ironic now. And as I slid the drawer shut for the final time, I glanced over at the glass wall of the boardroom. Zach was inside, shaking hands with a group of investors, smiling, pretending to be something he wasn't. I walked out of that building with my head held high, Not because it didn't hurt, not because I wasn't angry, but because I knew something Zach didn't. There was a clause, a very specific clause, hidden, subtle, but ironclad, inserted into the contract with our biggest client 5 years ago, at Mr. Carter's request. Back then, after a botched negotiation nearly sank the company, Mr. Carter asked me to draft a provision. It stated that only I, Ellen Walker, had the legal authority to negotiate, renew, or modify the agreements with that client. Without me, the contract was void. Completely. And Zach? He hadn't read it. Not yet. As I sat in my car, hands trembling, staring at the steering wheel, one thought drowned out everything else. Let's see how cocky you are tomorrow, Zach. I didn't have to wait long, because the next morning, the call came. And when it did, the very first words I heard were not a greeting. It was Mr. Carter, and he was roaring. Do you even know who she is? Read the contract. Right. Now. My phone buzzed again. I stared at it, thumb hovering over the answer button. Mr. Carter, the founder, the man who built the company from nothing, a man I respected more than anyone in my professional life. I took a deep breath and pressed answer. His voice hit me like a thunderclap. Ellen, why the hell am I hearing that you've been fired? There was no warmth, no politeness, just raw fury, barely restrained. For a moment, I was silent. Not because I didn't have an answer, but because I didn't even know where to start. Your son, I said quietly. Zach. He told me I was irrelevant. A sharp inhale. Then an explosion of noise. Papers slamming, drawers yanked open, the sound of footsteps pounding across hardwood floors. Irrelevant? Irrelevant? I winced, pulling the phone slightly away from my ear. Then, the words that would mark the beginning of Zach's unraveling. Do you even know who she is? I could practically hear the veins popping in Mr. Carter's neck. He wasn't just angry. He was stunned. Betrayed. The son he'd trusted to carry on his legacy had made a move so catastrophically stupid, it left him breathless. Read the contract, Mr. Carter growled at someone in the background. Read the contract right now. A pause. Then muffled voices. Papers flipping. The tension on the other end of the line thickened into something suffocating. Then, absolute silence. Long, heavy, deafening. I stayed perfectly still, gripping the steering wheel of my car, parked right outside my apartment building, heart pounding so loudly I thought it might echo through the phone. And then, a different voice. Zach's. Low, uneven, shaky. What is this? Mr. Carter didn't even try to contain himself. You didn't read it, did you? You arrogant fool. You walked in here thinking you knew everything, and you didn't even read the fine print. Another shuffle of papers, more silence. Then Zach again. His voice cracked now. It says she's the sole authorized negotiator on the Dalton account. No modifications, no renewals, no discussions without her signature. Correct, Mr. Carter spat. Correct. Because 5 years ago, after your bright idea to negotiate without legal review nearly cost us $8 million, I told Ellen to draft that clause. For protection. And now? I could hear him slamming something, his hand probably on the desk. You fired the one person holding together our most lucrative contract, the contract that accounts for over 30% of our annual revenue. Zach stammered. I didn't... You didn't think. That's the problem. The call went quiet for a moment. Then Mr. Carter came back directly to me. Ellen, where are you right now? I cleared my throat. At home, waiting to see how this unfolds. A deep sigh. The sound of a man realizing the depth of the hole his own son had just dug. Ellen, I am so deeply sorry for what my son did. And I need you. I need you to come in. Immediately. Dalton's renewal meeting is at 10. If you don't show, the entire deal collapses. A strange mix of emotions swirled in me. Part of me wanted to let it burn. Let Zach face the consequences of his ignorance. Let Mr. Carter see just how wrong his decision had been to hand the reins to someone so profoundly unqualified. But another part of me, the part that had dedicated 25 years to this company, that had built relationships, that took pride in the integrity of my work, that part wasn't ready to see it all go up in flames. I paused, then spoke carefully. I'll consider it, I said, but not without conditions. Silence again, then a low, measured response. Name them. My hands stopped trembling. I want everything in writing, I said. My role, my authority, my job security. And I want Zach nowhere near me, nowhere near my department, no power over my work. 0 done, Mr. Carter said without hesitation. And one more thing, I added, voice sharp now. I'm not walking through the employee entrance. A chuckle. Dry. Tired, but genuine. Fair enough. I hung up and sat in my car for a moment longer, watching the morning sun hit the edge of the high-rise where I had spent more than half my professional life. Then my phone buzzed again. 3 missed calls, all from Zach. I didn't answer. The 4th buzz was a text. I glanced down. Ellen, this was a misunderstanding. Let's be professional about this. We need you back. Call me. I smiled. A slow, satisfied, deliberate smile. No apology, no accountability, just panic, disguised as professionalism. I pocketed the phone, stepped out of the car, and straightened my jacket. Because today I wasn't just going back to work. I was going back on my terms. And something told me. Zach had no idea just how bad this day was about to get. By the time I arrived at the office, it was just after 9:30 a.m. But this time, I didn't park in the employee lot. I pulled right into the visitor's entrance, the front circle usually reserved for board members and VIP clients. I stepped out of my car, heels clicking against the marble pavement, head high, heart steady. Every step felt different. I wasn't walking in as someone begging for her job back. I was walking in as someone who suddenly remembered her worth. The receptionist, a young woman named Claire, jumped up the second she saw me. Her eyes widened. Clearly, word hadn't gotten to her yet. Ms. Walker, I wasn't expecting. I offered a polite smile. Mr. Carter is expecting me. You can let him know I'm here. She nodded so fast I thought her head might fall off. Yes. Right away. Behind me, I could already feel it, the subtle shift in the atmosphere. Heads turning, conversations pausing mid-sentence, fingers freezing on keyboards. I stepped into the elevator without waiting for an escort. As the door slid closed, my phone buzzed. Another message from Zach. Ellen, please respond. You can't just ignore this. We're all on the same side here. I chuckled under my breath. The same side? Sure, that's rich. The elevator dinged, and as the doors opened, I walked straight into the executive floor, normally a place I'd only be summoned to for high-level contract meetings. Now, I was here by invitation, on my terms. At the end of the hallway stood Mr. Carter. He was waiting, and he wasn't smiling. His face was tense. He looked tired, ashamed even. Ellen, he nodded. Thank you for coming. I gave a polite nod but didn't extend my hand. Let him feel the distance. Let him know this wasn't business as usual. Let's talk in my office, he gestured. As we stepped inside, I noticed immediately. Zach was already there, sitting in the corner, pale, jaw tight, shoulders tense. His phone sat face down on the table, his fingers fidgeting against it like it was some kind of lifeline. The moment he saw me, his expression shifted, like a man watching the gallows being built for him. I didn't look at him. Not once. Mr. Carter closed the door behind us and took a deep breath. "Ellen," he began, "I want to start by saying this. What happened yesterday was unacceptable. I should never have allowed Zach to act with unchecked authority. That was my mistake." I remained silent. Let him talk. Let him stew in it. "You are not irrelevant," he continued, voice softer now. "You are one of the most valuable people this company has ever had." Zach shifted uncomfortably in his seat, but said nothing. Mr. Carter pulled out a folder and slid it across the desk toward me. "Your new contract. As we discussed, Director of Strategic Partnerships. Effective immediately. Full authority over the Dalton account and all related contracts. No interference. From anyone I opened it, scanning quickly. My lawyer would review it later, but even at a glance, it was solid. My terms, my protections, my autonomy." I nodded once. Accepted. Then, for the first time since I walked in, I turned and looked directly at Zach. "You tried to erase me," I said quietly, evenly. "But you didn't read the fine print." His eyes darted away. "You thought you could walk in here, wave around your last name, and undo 25 years of work, relationships, and trust with the stroke of a pen." "Ellen, look," he started. "No." I cut him off, voice sharper now. "You don't get to speak. You don't get to explain. Not to me." I turned back to Mr. Carter. "The Dalton meeting is scheduled in 20 minutes. I assume we're still going forward?" He nodded quickly. "Yes, Mr. Dalton's team is already in the conference room." "Good," I said. "Then we don't have time for pointless apologies." I stood, straightened my jacket, and headed toward the door. But just as I reached for the handle, Mr. Carter's voice stopped me. "Ellen," he said quietly, "after this meeting, we'll need to talk. About the future." I paused. "Of the company," he added. Then, more pointedly, "and about Zach." I didn't respond. I didn't have to. Because as I opened that door, what I saw confirmed everything I already knew. The hallway was lined with people. Employees who had heard the rumors, the whispers, the fallout. Some pretended to be busy. Others just watched. And when I walked toward the conference room, it wasn't with the cautious, careful steps of someone begging for a second chance. It was the stride of someone who knew. She was the reason this place hadn't fallen apart already. I glanced sideways through the glass wall of the conference room. There sat Mr. Dalton and his team, waiting. On the other side of the glass, pacing like a caged animal, Zach. His face wasn't smug now. It was pale, tight, panicked. And as I opened the conference room door, I watched him stop mid-pace, jaw locking, eyes widening. Because in that moment, he realized something. This wasn't his company anymore. Not in any way that mattered. The moment I stepped into the conference room, the atmosphere shifted. Not just for me, but for everyone sitting at that polished mahogany table. Mr. Dalton, a stern man in his late 50s, turned immediately. His expression softened when he saw me. His two senior advisors, Lena and Mark, exchanged glances but nodded in acknowledgement. "Ellen," Mr. Dalton said, standing slightly. "Good to see you." I offered a polite, measured smile. "Thank you for waiting." His eyes narrowed for a brief moment. I was starting to wonder if, well, you know. His gaze flicked toward the glass wall, toward Zach, who was still pacing outside like a shark denied the water. "Oh, I know." I replied calmly, sliding my files onto the table. But rest assured, we're proceeding as planned. Mr. Carter entered a moment later, closing the door behind him firmly. He nodded at the Dalton team but avoided looking at his son entirely. "Apologies for the confusion," he said. "There's been internal restructuring." A diplomatic way to phrase, "My son tried to tank the company." Mr. Dalton raised a skeptical brow. "We've been doing business together for, 13 years now? And yet, when we arrived this morning, someone told my team that Ellen no longer worked here." I glanced at Mr. Carter, giving him the space to fix what his son had broken. His jaw tightened. That information was inaccurate. Ellen remains the sole authorized negotiator for this contract, as per the terms we all agreed upon 5 years ago. Dalton's eyes flicked to me. So that clause was real. I gave him a slight nod. Very real. Lena leaned forward. "I assume then the rumors about changes in leadership are also inaccurate." I kept my expression perfectly neutral. "We are here to discuss the future of this partnership. Everything else is noise." Dalton cracked a grin. "Glad to hear it." Outside the glass, I caught sight of Zach, still pacing, phone pressed to his ear. His face was red, his movements frantic. He was watching, but he couldn't come in. He had no authority here, not today, and he knew it. "Let's begin," I said, flipping open the final draft of the contract renewal. "As discussed in our previous correspondence, the terms have been adjusted to account for the increased logistics costs on your side. For the next 40 minutes, it was business. Precise, professional. Exactly the kind of high-stakes negotiation I'd handled dozens of times before, but never with quite this much on the line. Every glance from Mr. Dalton carried an unspoken question. Is this company stable? Are they still the partner we trust? Every line of the contract was a chance to reassure him that, yes, we were. Or rather, I was. Mr. Carter mostly stayed silent, observing, occasionally nodding. It was clear, even to the Dalton team, that this wasn't his show anymore. Not in this room. This was mine. As we neared the close, Mr. Dalton leaned back in his chair, tapping his pen against his notebook. "I have to admit," he said, voice low but firm. "When we heard Ellen was out, we were already preparing to walk." Mr. Carter flinched but said nothing. Dalton continued. "But seeing her here, knowing she's still handling this, that makes all the difference." He clicked his pen shut and smiled. "You have a deal." Relief didn't hit me like a wave. It was quieter than that. More like the tension in my chest slowly releasing, inch by inch. We stood, shook hands. Lena and Mark followed suit. "By the way," Dalton added as he gathered his things, "you might want to tighten your chain of command. Chaos isn't a good look." Mr. Carter nodded stiffly. Understood. As the Dalton team filed out, I walked them to the elevator. Lena paused before stepping in. "Ellen," she said quietly, "if things ever change around here, you call me. Seriously, you deserve better than this circus." I smiled, genuine this time. "Thank you, Lena. I'll remember that." As the elevator doors closed, I turned back toward the conference room, just in time to see Zach storming toward me. His face was twisted, anger, panic, disbelief, all rolled into one. "You just had to make me look bad," he spat, voice low but shaking. I tilted my head, completely calm now. "Zach, you did that all by yourself." He opened his mouth to respond, but a voice cut through the hallway before he could. "Zach." It was Mr. Carter. His tone was cold. Final. "My office. Now." Zach looked like he wanted to protest, but one look at his father's face told him better. I watched as they disappeared down the hall, the tension between them so thick it felt like the air itself might snap. For a moment, I stood there alone. 25 years, 2 hours of negotiations, and everything had changed, or was about to, because the Dalton deal was secure. But I knew this wasn't the end, not even close. Zach wasn't the kind of man who accepted defeat quietly, and something in Mr. Carter's face told me a reckoning was coming. I straightened my jacket, exhaled slowly, and headed back toward my desk. But I couldn't shake the feeling. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. For the next few days, the office felt different. Not just because the Dalton deal was signed, not even because Mr. Carter had made it clear. I was back, with more authority than before. No, the change was something less visible, but more chilling. People were watching me. Some smiled when I passed. Quiet, cautious smiles, the kind that said, "Glad you're back, but we're keeping our heads down." Others couldn't even meet my eyes. Their conversations dropped to whispers the moment I stepped into the hallway. You could almost feel it in the air. An electric tension, like the entire building was holding its breath. Zach wasn't pacing anymore. But he wasn't gone either. His office door stayed shut most of the day. But every now and then I'd catch glimpses. Him slipping into closed-door meetings with a few department heads, leaning over someone's desk, whispering, sometimes laughing, but never looking in my direction. I knew that laugh. I'd heard it before, right before he fired me. And something told me he hadn't accepted his defeat. Not really. The first sign came on Thursday, an email from Dalton's logistics coordinator. Simple, polite, but off. "Ellen, just confirming. You requested the shipment schedule be pushed back 2 weeks? Seems unusual given the contract terms, but happy to proceed if that's the case." My stomach dropped. I hadn't sent that request. Not even close. I pulled up my sent folder. Nothing. I checked the email thread. Sure enough, there it was. An email with my signature, my exact formatting, my closing line, "Best Ellen," everything. Except I didn't write it. A cold chill spread across my back. I forwarded the message to Dalton immediately. "This request was not sent by me. Please disregard until we clarify internally." Dalton responded almost instantly. "Understood. Figured something was strange. Let us know." Crisis averted. For now. But I knew what this was. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a glitch. It was a warning. The second sign came the very next day. I opened my expense dashboard to approve the travel reimbursement from the Dalton meeting. Denied. Flagged for unauthorized travel. I stared at the screen, stunned. That had never happened before. I had never, not once, had an expense report denied in my entire 25-year career. I clicked into the notes. Per updated policy, reimbursements require pre-approval from the executive office. ZC Zach Carter. I clenched my jaw. This wasn't about money. This was about sending a message. You might have won the Dalton deal, but I'm still here. By Monday morning, it was undeniable. A spreadsheet I'd submitted to finance, one I knew was accurate, came back riddled with errors, numbers swapped, columns misaligned, my name tagged with a note. Multiple inaccuracies found in data provided by Ellen Walker. Please verify before use. It was subtle. It was careful. It was textbook corporate sabotage. Nothing loud. Nothing that would trigger a formal complaint on its own. But enough that over time it would chip away at something far more valuable than my job. My reputation. I knew exactly what this was. I'd seen it before. Years ago at my first job. A senior manager who couldn't confront problems head on. So he'd start quietly closing doors around you. Deny resources. Remove your access. Flag your work with false errors. Isolate you. And then, when you were sufficiently exhausted, when the mistakes, real or fabricated, stacked up high enough, he'd smile across the table and say, "It's probably best if you moved on." But I wasn't 24 anymore. And I wasn't naive. Not this time. I started documenting everything. Every flagged expense, every falsified error, every email discrepancy, screenshots, backups, time-stamped folders. I created a private log on an encrypted drive, noting dates, times, exactly who was copied, and who wasn't. And I wasn't subtle about it either. When IT sent me a vague ticket request about suspicious logins under your account, I responded by CCing Mr. Carter. When finance questioned my numbers, I pulled the original spreadsheet from my version control system, showing it had been accurate when I submitted it. Every step Zach made, I matched with quiet precision. And every time I CC'd one more person, legal. Then, on Wednesday afternoon, came the moment that shifted everything. I was walking past the small meeting room by the east hallway when I heard voices. Loud, frustrated. Zach's. "She's unstable. Ever since she came back, she's been aggressive, erratic. I don't think she's fit to handle major clients anymore." A second voice, someone I didn't recognize. Probably one of the newer executives. "But she just closed Dalton. I mean, under serious pressure." Zach scoffed. "She got lucky. We can't run a company on luck." My hands tightened into fists. So this was the plan. Poison the well. Whisper it long enough, loud enough to anyone who would listen until doubt spread. Until it wasn't about a contract clause anymore. It was about whether I was a liability. That night, I sat alone in my apartment staring out at the city skyline. I wasn't angry. I was done being angry. Now, I was focused. This wasn't just about Dalton, or about getting fired. This was about every late night I had worked, every weekend I had sacrificed, every time I had fixed someone else's mess without getting credit. And no, I wasn't going to let someone like Zach Carter erase me. Not quietly, not ever. By Thursday morning, something felt different. The hallway chatter wasn't the usual cautious whispering. It was heavier, tense. The kind of tension that sinks into the floorboards, into the air itself. People weren't just watching me anymore. They were waiting for something to break. And then, an email. Subject: Mandatory meeting, Executive Audit Committee. From Mr. Carter. Time 10 a.m., Boardroom A. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. Audit. The word alone sent a chill through the office. It wasn't a word you tossed around lightly. Not unless things were serious. Very serious. At 9:55, I made my way toward the executive boardroom. The hallway was lined with faces, some pretending to check their phones, others blatantly staring. Everyone knew this wasn't just a normal meeting. When I stepped inside, the room was already half full. Mr. Carter sat at the head of the table, face unreadable. Next to him were two internal auditors, David, the lead, and Monica from compliance. Their laptops were open, a folder thick with documents between them. Zach was there too, slouched in his chair, arms crossed, his foot tapping against the leg of the table like a man holding back a panic attack. When he saw me walk in, his face tightened. He tried for that arrogant smirk he always wore. But it flickered, faltered, because even he knew this wasn't going to go his way. "Thank you, everyone," Mr. Carter began, his voice colder than I'd ever heard it. "This meeting concerns recent irregularities flagged by our internal audit." David cleared his throat, flipping open the folder. We've spent the last week investigating a series of system anomalies, login irregularities, altered spreadsheets, falsified communications. Our findings show that these were not external breaches, they were internal. He turned his laptop slightly, displaying a web of login logs. Specifically, we traced unauthorized activity to devices logged in under two main credentials: Zach Carter's executive assistant and Zach Carter himself. Zach shot upright. That's insane. Anyone could have... David raised a hand. Let me finish. He clicked to the next slide, an activity timeline. Multiple incidents were cross-referenced. Expense report denials flagged under Zach's credentials. Fabricated emails generated from devices assigned to his assistant, but manually logged in using credentials traced back to Zach's executive account. A long, suffocating silence. Zach's bravado cracked wide open. You don't have proof, he hissed, but his voice was shaking now. This is circumstantial. David didn't even flinch. Actually, it's not. He flipped to the next page. Here's the security footage from October 3rd. 4:57 p.m., Zach manually logging into a shared terminal outside the break room. The same terminal used to send the falsified shipment request to the Dalton Group. Zach's face went pale. And Mr. Carter? He didn't yell. He didn't slam the table. He just sighed. The kind of sigh that carried 40 years of building something, only to watch someone reckless try to burn it down in weeks. Zach, Mr. Carter said quietly, I gave you chance after chance. I defended you when the board doubted you. I told myself you just needed time to grow into this. But this... He shook his head. This is theft, sabotage, an attack on the very people who kept this company alive long before you ever stepped foot in here. Zach opened his mouth, closed it. His hands trembled. Effective immediately, Mr. Carter continued. You are terminated from this company, permanently. Your shares are frozen pending legal review. Security is waiting outside this room. Zach shot up. You can't do this. I'm your son. Mr. Carter's eyes didn't soften. I am your father, but in this room I am the CEO, and this is business. Security entered quietly. Zach looked between them, then at me. And for the first time since this entire nightmare began, he didn't look smug. He looked small, powerless. They escorted him out without a word. When the door closed behind him, the silence was heavy. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Mr. Carter turned to me. Ellen, he said, voice softer now but steady. I owe you more than an apology. I owe you the future of this company. He slid a new folder across the table. Inside, an offer. Chief Operating Officer, COO, an executive seat. Full authority over client relations, contracts, and internal operations. Reporting directly to Mr. Carter. No one else. I don't just want you to stay, he said. I want you to help me rebuild this, the right way. I sat there for a long moment, processing it, feeling every emotion swirl together. Vindication, relief, and something else. A quiet kind of pride. I'll do it, I said, but on one condition. His brows lifted. Anything. No more looking the other way, I said. No more protecting people because of who they are. Not family. Not friends. Not anyone. His gaze didn't waver. Agreed. That afternoon, as I walked back through the office, the energy had shifted entirely. People smiled. Not the cautious, guarded smiles from before. Genuine. Grateful. A junior analyst I barely knew gave me a thumbs up as I passed. Someone from HR mouthed, "Thank you." And I realized, this wasn't just my win. It was a win for everyone who had ever been dismissed, underestimated, or pushed aside by someone who thought power was their birthright. I reached my new office, temporary for now, while renovations were underway. I stood for a moment, looking at the blank nameplate on the door, and I smiled. Because this wasn't just a comeback. It was a reminder. You don't get to erase people just because you're holding the pen.